The Ready to Learn Learning Triangle is a teaching tool. It addresses various learning styles and engages different senses. This workshop is based on these principles: view, read, and do.
Ready to Learn actually has 3 goals that we want each parent to accomplish or to incorporate in their lives. As you've watched some of the Ready to Learn workshops, you've noticed that we've included the Ready to Learn triangle or the learning triangle, each one of them. Can anybody tell me what that learning triangle is, or do you remember what the learning triangle it is? Anybody remember the first one where we actually view and then we review, and then we do an activity? And we know with television, if you incorporate that with that, that children actually learn better, and that the shows that you do watch have a better foundation of what they're trying to teach on that particular show. Our second goal is that children are read to 20 minutes every day. And remember, as they get older and they start reading, that we want them to read 20 minutes to 30 minutes, and then you also read 20 minutes to them also, 2 grade levels above where they're reading. So actually there's going to be about 40 or 50 minutes a day that would be reading in your home. Our last goal is called Emergent Literacy Skills. And as we've talked to people and as we've inquired about what they've learned from our workshops, most everyone knows what the learning triangle is. Most of them go away knowing, oh, the importance of reading, and I'm going to read to their children. But when we talk about the emergent literacy skills, we always say, now what are the emergent literacy skills? And they look at us like, I think I've remembered that, or I think I've heard that, but I can't really remember what they are. And so this particular workshop, we're going to talk about emergent literacy skills and what they are. To break that down, we're going to talk about what is emergent. Does anyone know what emergent is? What does emergent mean? Sharon, do you know what emergent means?
Just beginning.
Yes, thank you. Perfect answer, just beginning. We're not talking about being able to read. We're talking about what you can do so your child will be prepared, or when they go to school, that they can learn to read. And there are 5 emergent literacy skills that we're going to break down today and really discuss. We're going to show some clips that actually back up the things that we're talking about. We're not going to be doing the learning triangle as much, but the clips that you'll see from our PBS shows will just support the areas that we're talking about. And so remember, emergent literacy skills. What can you do to start the learning process? Those 5 emergent literacy skills that we've talked about, I'm going to have you guys as a group just silently, not silently, but I want you to discuss in these 5 areas. I've got writing, I've got decoding, I've got talking, listening, and comprehension. I want you as your table to discuss what would come first for a child to learn how to read. What would you need to do first so a child could eventually learn how to read once they enter school? So just take a few minutes and put those in order. Once again, we've got listening, writing, decoding, talking, and comprehension.
I think it's them. Yeah, and then I think writing.
Decoding?
Decoding.
Before talking?
Yeah, I think you gotta get comprehension before writing.
No, decoding's kind of like getting the point of the message, right?
Decoding.
Maybe comprehension before talking too.
Yeah, I think comprehension.
Decoding the words, I guess,
Listening and
not the
listening
story
is
necessarily.
They can understand what you're saying.
Well, but if you listen and
I don't know
you
about the last
comprehend
3. doing?
after that,
Oh.
and then
Or is
you
it what
start
the
to
parents-
talk back.
Gosh, I like this discussion. I might say this, yeah, this would be the child. This would be a
I
child.
kind of say decoding would be here.
And I probably, I've not given you enough definition of what each word means, so that could probably help. So,
But I mean, like, they can understand the story or something before they're talking.
We need to find out decoding what.
yeah, what decoding means. I really like the discussion that you're having here, because you keep trying to say, well, what does decoding really mean? And well, you have to understand, because comprehension means understanding, and you would have to understand after each one, wouldn't you? And so really comprehension would be under each one. In our case, we're going to put it at the very end. But Nancy had a really good point that you need to comprehend in each one. Now, having done that, you guys did a really good job. You've got listening, talking, and I'm just going to switch these two, writing, decoding, and then comprehension. Once again, remember what Nancy said, though, is if a child understands what you're saying and then understands what he's saying, what he's writing, then decoding. Now, a couple of you were like, well, what does decoding mean? Kasia was saying, well, what does that mean? We need to find out. And so we're going to talk about that right now. What does each one of these words mean, and how will that make my child actually learn to read one day? Because we're talking about emergent literacy skills. Everyone understood that listening was the very first object in our emergent literacy skills. And listening is very important. As we've talked about in nursery rhymes and storytelling and a lot of our other different workshops, is listening comprehension precedes reading comprehension. I just want to give you a study that the Department of Early Education conducted that really cemented this to me as a parent. It talked about an 18-month-old child learns 9 words a day. 9 words a day, an 18-month-old child. And so as that child is learning 9 words a day, let's say in a 6-month amount of time, so that's about 180 days, if they're learning 9 words a day, they're learning almost 1,700 words just in a 6-month amount of time. Now, if you have or know an 18-month-old, how many words do they speak? Can they speak 2,000 words? No. But as Nancy said, they can comprehend that. They understand that. And I have a granddaughter. I have 4 grandchildren, and my one granddaughter is in this stage right now. And we can talk to her, and I can say, where are your eyes? And she points at him, and then she points us right in the eyeball. Where's your shoes? We're going to go to the park. What are we going to do? And she knows exactly what we're going to do, although she can't always say all those words. Now remember, those 9 words a day come from a parent that talks to their child like they're going to talk back. That would really surprise you if your child started talking back. But that's what we call conversation mode. Now, 1/3 of the children in the United States are talked to in what we call command. Now, as a parent, I do this myself, but I try to talk in both. But for the most part, we need to stay in conversation. Command is, don't hit your sister, turn off your telephone, eat your dinner, brush your teeth, go to bed. Can you imagine that some children only hear that over and over and over? They never hear that conversation mode. That child is only learning 3 words a day versus the 9 words a day. And so they actually start school at a deficit because their vocabulary and their comprehension is less than the child that is just talked to. Along this study, it said that mothers that continue their education after high school, that their children learn 12 words a day versus the 9 or the 3. The higher or the more educated a parent is, the more vocabulary a child will have. Why would you think that, Sharon, that a child would actually have a bigger vocabulary just because of the mother's or the father's education?
Because they build upon their mother or father's education, and that gives them a step up to even build.
Okay. And you know, as a mother myself, and every mother that I've ever worked with, or every parent that I've worked with, said, I want better for my children than I had myself. And so the more that we know, the more that we can pass along to our children. And so education is a key component in helping your children. Now, some of us can't always go to school, but we can continue to educate ourselves. There's lots of ways you can continue to educate yourself. And so how important is that? Just think of those words, the 9 words versus 3 words and 12 words. And a teacher gave me an an interesting example one time. She said, you know, not only does that affect their reasoning skills and their cognitive skills when they come to school, but it also is their social and emotional, because the way they're talked to at home is the way that they talk to with their classmates. And so Erica, as a teacher, has probably seen this, where a child is usually commanding everyone to do things. And what happens is then as a social skill, children don't like to be around that child as much. And so it really makes an all the way around effect in how that child interacts with other kids. Born Learning has great ideas for parents in this stage of what they can do with their children to help them eventually learn to read. Now, in this stage, what kind of books do we want? We want barn books. We want board books where children can chew on them, where they can handle them, where they're chunky and that they can turn the pages. Don't worry as much about the words as just introducing the books. And the next topic we're going to talk about is talking. Children and talking. Goes hand in hand, doesn't it? Children and talking go hand in hand, don't they? If you've ever been around young children, you know they talk and talk and talk. That is what we call the verbal learning stage. Children have to hear themselves talk to actually learn. And so it's very important for them in this stage to talk. I read in a professional journal once that when you ask a child to sit down and be quiet before the age of 6, it's like asking them to sit down and not think. Now, having taught preschool, I do know that when you ask them to be quiet, they're thinking, but they're not thinking about what you're saying. They're thinking about, hey, my mom said, or teacher, he's doing. But what we can do is the more that they can talk, the more they can learn. And so in this stage where we call it a verbal learning, they need to be engaged. They need to use a lot of books where they can talk as you're reading. Now, this book is a very old book, but it's a great book. It's called Chicken Soup with Rice. And I'm just going to read a couple pages, and you can see how a child can be talking or talking with you as you read this book. It's a book about the months, actually. Need to start with January. In January, it's so nice, while slipping and sliding ice, to sip hot chicken soup with rice. Sipping once, sipping twice, sipping chicken soup with rice. In February, it will be my snowman's anniversary, with cake for him and hot soup for me. Happy once, happy twice, happy chicken soup with rice. See that repetition already? In March, the wind blows down the door and spills my soup upon the floor. It laps it up and roars for more, blowing once, blowing twice, blowing chicken soup with rice. That kind of repetition for a child where they'll also be able to talk. A lot of rhyming books. I love Dr. Seuss books because a child can actually read before they know how to decode the words, but they can repeat them as you go along. Remember, when your children talk and talk and talk and talk, that they're learning. Encourage them to talk. I always say to parents, you might have a headache by the time you go to bed if you have more than one child in this stage, but they're actually talking and learning. I don't know if any of you have felt like that. I know my older kids with their little sister, we would be watching a movie and she would need to be narrating or making a comment. That's very normal. Children need to talk. How many have children in this stage? Anyone has a child that's talking in this stage, or a grandchild that's talking in this stage? Remember, that is normal, and that as they talk, that they can learn. Find books that they can participate with you as you read. When I was asking you to put the emergent literacy skills in order, you know, you mixed up writing and decoding, and I didn't give you enough information. So I'm going to back up and give you some information, so I'm sure if you did this afterwards, you would understand why writing actually comes before decoding. When we talk about writing, children start out with pictures or symbols. And sometimes we think of writing as just writing letters and words, but actually the pictures come first. And that's what we call environmental print. And as you go about your days, you see environmental print that just comes very naturally and normally, and you don't always just separate that. But if I'm walking into the ladies' restroom, especially when I'm in a different type of restaurant that might have a different way of saying women or ladies, I look for the symbol to make sure there's a skirt there before I walk in. That's environmental print. A stop sign is environmental print. It says something. It's not always just the word S-T-O-P. It's the whole sign that has meaning. What does heart mean? Nancy, what does heart mean?
Generally love.
Love, okay, so generally love. Candace, I'm putting you on the spot. Can you think of any environmental print that children might see that they know the meaning as they're driving by a particular something? Can you think of something as they're driving that they might see that's environmental print? I'm putting you on the spot here.
I think of golden arches.
Okay, I know that there were some times that my daughter would see those, did not know how to read, but would want to stop, okay? And so as you're going through your life, that's the first part of writing, is environmental print. Please find lots of books that have that, lots of bright pictures where children can go, what happened first, what happened next, what's going to happen. Let them use the pictures. I have a couple books that I want to share with you that actually, and so it will be very hard to read because there's no words. These are wordless books, but they're great books for children that are in this stage that quite don't know how to read yet, but they can look at a picture and tell you a story. When I first saw this title of this book by Zoom, I thought it was about zooming around, having 3 boys that were always moving. I thought it was about zooming around. But when I got it, I realized it wasn't about zooming, it was about a perspective. And each page you see a picture, and then they actually show you from a different perspective. And so each page shows you more and more of the picture till you see a different perspective. You can tell a different story. There's another book in this series called Resume also, that it takes that and it just keeps going down and showing, and then at the very end you get to a small dot. So it's a really fun book a child can read it to you whether or not they can read or not. Another one is A Boy, a Dog, a Frog, and a Friend. And there are no words in this book. And I like these kind of books, having children, when I would say, tell me a story or read me the book, and they would say, I can't, Mom, I can't read. Well, this is the perfect book because there are no words. So it's your imagination, it's your story. Finding books that have a lot of pictures where a child can tell a story is very good in this pre-writing emphasis, where the pictures become symbols. Now, how important are pictures? I would have to say I'll still read a particular book. There's a series of books that I like, and at the beginning of the chapter, there's just a teeny tiny little picture. Okay, and I'll look at that picture. I actually will sort of study that picture. I'll read the chapter, and then I go back and look at the picture and think, oh, that's what that meant. Do you see how much the pictures mean? You know, when they say a picture tells 1,000 words, it's very true. It tells a whole story. As you're reading a book, have you ever read with a child that you've finished reading the words, and you turn the page and they're like, wait, I'm not finished yet? Because the picture tells the story. So remember, environmental print is the start of the writing process. And a child will start to actually draw pictures to tell you a story. You might start out as a big blob. Then you have little stick arms. And sometimes you have eyes, and then you add hair. But it actually tells a story. One last book that I'd like to share with you in this section about writing is a book, Stella Luna. And I just want to show you the pictures. Beautiful pictures. They're incredible. What's interesting is, and I read this book several times before I noticed it, but in this story, there's the words that tell the story of Stella Luna, a bat. This little story that's right at the very top, that's very, very small, tells a story of Stella Luna's mother. Now, when they're together, the pictures are the same. And as they separate, because they are separated and Stella Luna has to go live with some birds, we see a wordless story of what happens to Mother. But then over here and here tells the story of Stella Luna. It's a fun story to read a couple times and then to show to children. Just this teeny little picture that tells a whole different story. Now, as we talk about writing, we do include letters. And the first letter that any child ever learns is the letters of their name. Those are the very first letters that they learn. And just as a heart or a stop sign or the ladies' restroom, those letters don't have a sound yet, but they are a symbol of, that's me, Mom, that's me. And so they'll be driving around, and if their name is Tom and they see a T, even in stop sign, there's my name, Mom, there's my name. And it's usually the first letter and the last letter that they'll recognize. And then those other letters will come next. And that's where we're going to, just segment into our next stage of decoding. But remember, at that point, letters are still symbols. They have a meaning. And that's why they write them all over your house and in your books and in your car, on your mother-in-law's brand new leather couch, because it symbolizes, that is me. And so recognize that that is a very important part of writing. Let children scribble, let them draw you stories, and then let them tell you. That's part of writing. Decoding. Okay, decoding for me as a parent, I have to say, was the hardest part of reading. It's where a child will actually take a word. They know the specific sounds of each letter, and then they start putting it together, like cat and hat and fat. And they're not looking, they're looking at each individual letter and they're putting it together. Now, the best way that I can describe decoding is, I want you to think, most of you in this room, if I ask Candace to read a page of a book, she's a pretty good decoder. And she could probably read most pages on the book, right, Candace? Okay? Mm-hmm. But how many have had that happen where you've been asked to read something out loud? By the raise of hand. Nobody's ever been asked to read out something out loud. And so as you've been asked to read something out loud, then you sit down and then the teacher goes on and says, now, Erica, could you tell me what that means? And what usually happens, Erica?
You have no idea. You're so focused on reading it and reading it correctly that all meaning goes out the door.
Okay, and that's exactly what children are doing when they're decoding, okay? They are so focused on sounding out those words, on getting it right, that the comprehension is not there. This is a good time when children are decoding or in a decoding stage, is to read the book before they read it. You're not cheating. You're not giving away anything, but you're giving them, oh, this is what's going to happen in the story. And then they can concentrate on decoding. Or maybe after they've decoded a few words, then retell what they've read. That is why reading to grade levels above where they are is a great, great idea, because it helps them still get new vocabulary words, helps them with the comprehension, and they don't have to focus on the decoding. Decoding is very difficult. It takes a lot of practice, and we still do it as adults. And so as you decode, remember, decoding does not mean comprehension. Remember, in the decoding stages, make sure that your children are not reading above their grade level, but they're finding words that they can sound out. Once again, this is the hard one for me as a parent, because I actually want to give the word away, when they're sounding out. I just want to tell them what the word is. But sort of bite your tongue, let them decode, and then they can move on to that comprehension stage. I really liked it when Nancy and all of you were talking and you said that comprehension really goes between each one, that we need to understand a child needs to understand what you are saying, and then they need to understand the words that they're saying, and we need to understand them too. And writing, what that environmental print means, and decoding. In comprehension, this is where a child can read a book or listen to a story and understand what's happening. Now, in front of you, I have the paper, Then What Happened. Each of you have this. And this is a great comprehension activity as a child, as you read to a child and then they try to figure out what happened next. Now, we start this in kindergarten. A child might not have words in front of them, that way they would have pictures of what happened and then what happened. What was the beginning, the middle, and the end? And that's story comprehension. Here, these are words, and so this would be for an older child. But as I read this book, I want you to sort of say, oh, this happened first, this happened second. This is what we call story comprehension, when you know the sequence of the story. And this book is called A Diary of a Worm. Mom says there are 3 things I should always remember. The earth gives us everything we need. We dig tunnels, we can take care of the earth. Never bother Daddy when he's eating the newspaper. March 29th. Today I tried to teach Spider how to dig. First of all, his legs got stuck. Then he swallowed a bunch of dirt. Tomorrow he's going to teach me how to walk upside down. March 30th. Worms cannot walk upside down. April 4th. Fishing season started today. We all dug deeper. April 10th. It rained all night and the ground was soaked. We spent the entire day on the sidewalk. Hopscotch is a very dangerous game. April 15th. I forgot my lunch today. I got so hungry that I ate my homework. My teacher made me write, I will not eat my homework 10 times. When I finished, I ate that too. April 20, I snuck up on some kids in the park today. They didn't hear me coming. I wiggled right up between them and they screamed. I love it when they do that. May 1st, Grandpa taught us that good manners are very important. So today I said good morning to the first ant I saw. There were 600 more of them in line. Good morning, good morning. How are you doing? Good morning. Nice to see you. Good morning. I stood there all day. May 8th, had the worst nightmare last night. Giant birds playing hopscotch. Mom says I have to stop eating so much garbage before I go to bed. May 15th, I got into a fight with Spider today. He told me he needed legs to be cool. Then he ran away. I couldn't keep up. Maybe he's right. May 16th, I made Spider laugh so hard he fell out of a tree. Who needs legs? May 28th, last night I went to the school dance. You put your head in, you put your head out, you do the hokey pokey and you turn yourself about. That's all we could do. June 5th, today we made macaroni necklaces in class. I brought mine home and we ate it for dinner. June 15th, my favorite day. My older sister thinks she's so pretty. I told her that no matter how much time she spent looking in the mirror, her face always looked like her rear end. Spider thought that was really funny. Mom did not. July 4th, when I grow up, I want to be a Secret Service agent. Spider says I will have to be very careful because the president might step on me by mistake. It's a dangerous job, I said, but somebody's got to do it. July 28th, 3 things I don't like about being a worm. I can't chew gum, I can't have a dog, and all that homework. July 29th, 3 good things about being a worm. I never have to go to the dentist. I never get in trouble for tracking mud through the house, and I never have to take a bath. August 1st, it's not always easy being a worm. We're very small, and sometimes people forget that we're even here. But like Mom says, the earth never forgets that we're here. Okay, on your paper that the rest of the camera can't see is what happened first, what happened second. And then there's an activity of making your own story of a diary of a You pick your own animal, and then you create your own story. As we've talked about our emergent literacy skills, and we've talked about ready to learn, and we've talked about the best things that you can do with your children, remember, television is a tool. It's not the teacher. Use it as an educational resource, but don't think it's going to be the only thing that teaches your children. Remember the learning triangle. View a program, review the concept with the book, and then do an activity. That's when television becomes educational, is when you do something with it after it's turned off. Use television as a support for what you're teaching your children at home. Find the shows that are appropriate ages for your children, and that will be the best experience that you can have with television. Television can be a wonderful teaching tool for you. It can also be a great source of entertainment, depending on how you use it. There's always that educational, if you give a mouse a cookie, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, and this is going to happen. And you can make that happen just by talking, letting your children talk, letting them write, listening to them while they're decoding, and making sure they understand what they're reading. And you'll have a child that is ready to enter school and ready to learn.